Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. The first character to scrutinize is this guy, Joseph Garcin, a Brazilian, we assume that he's Brazilian, newspaper man, meaning somebody who works in the newspaper. He might be a reporter, he might be an editor. All we know is that he spends a lot of time at the office and cares quite a bit about what the people at the office think of him. He is also a pacifist, and we don't really know whether he's a pacifist just by conviction or whether he is also, and this is something he's very preoccupied with, whether he's also a coward. He's a husband, and we're going to look at that very closely in a moment. And he talks about him as having gotten his wife out of the gutter. He saved her from, the lowest of the lower class. He's also a womanizer. And these are things that we can say about him that he reveals over time. There's other things as well that we would want to say that have to do with his function within the play. That also show us, who he is, because remember, you can't change your character once in hell. So something that you can say about him is that he's rather reflective, and that he's concerned with something like an absolute. Like, you could say that he wants to exist in other people's eyes, but he wants to exist in a certain way. He wants to be seen as a tough guy, as a real man, and he also wants to be seen as somebody who is worthy of love. And we'll get to that dynamic in a bit. So let's look at each of these in turn. Quite a bit of the play, he's talking. All the other characters can see what's going on in the world that they've left, and he is alternating between what's going on at the newspaper office and what's going on with his wife, who is trying to find out what's happened to him. He was shot as a deserter by a firing squad, and they don't let his wife know for some time, and then they finally give his shirt to her, full of bullet holes and blood, and that's how she finds out. So all of these things actually end up getting tied together, at least the newspaper man, pacifist, and husband. How so? Well, it's because he's a pacifist that when he is conscripted, he leaves. He flees. He gets on a train to go to Mexico, where his intention, according to him, is to start a pacifist newspaper. That's at least what he's telling himself, and what he tells his fellow residents in hell for a while. But he's not quite sure whether that truly was what was on his mind, or whether he's really just a coward. He gets caught, and they bring him back, and they execute him by firing squad, and he says, if I could just be courageous at that moment, and we don't know exactly what happens, but he doesn't show courage. Perhaps he wets his pants or something along those lines, and then his life ends. His wife is left in the lurch, trying to figure out what happened to her husband for quite a while, and he's not particularly caring about what has happened to his wife. He seems much more interested in whether he really was a good man or whether he was a coward. There's a set of passages that are particularly revealing, I think, where he talks about his relationship with his wife. And he says, "Why am I here? It's not because I was a deserter. It's not because I was a coward. I'm here because I treated my wife abominably. That's all. For 5 years, naturally, she's suffering still. There she is. The moment I mention her, I see her." And he goes through, talking about how she's, there with the shirt, and she's not crying. And he says, "No, you can't shed a tear, my love. Surely you'll squeeze one out at last. No, you can't manage it. Night after night I came home blind drunk, stinking of wine and women. She'd sat up for me, of course, but she never cried, never uttered a word of reproach. Only her eyes spoke, big, tragic eyes. I don't regret anything. I must pay the price, but I shan't whine. It's snowing in the street. Won't you cry?" And he goes on with that. And Inez asks, "Why did you hurt her like that?" And remember, Inez is herself kind of a sadist, so it's not clear why she's asking. And Garcin says, because it was so easy. A word was enough to make her flinch. I'm fond of teasing. I watched and waited. And so, what else did he do? There's another incident that he brings up that shows you, what a womanizer he was. Here's something you can get your teeth into. I brought a half-caste girl to stay in our house. My wife slept upstairs. She must have heard everything. She was an early riser, and as I and the girls stayed in bed late, she served us our morning coffee. And then Inez says, "You brute," and he says, "Yes, a brute if you like, but a well-beloved brute." So he doesn't really have any regrets over what he thinks landed him in hell. And nobody ever actually says, yes, this is exactly why you are being sentenced. It could be because he was a coward. It could be because he was in what Sartre calls bad faith, this condition where a human being essentially lies to themselves and tells themselves that there's something other than they are, usually something better than they are, that they're not responsible for the kind of behavior that they engage in, the kind of person that they've become, that circumstances forced it, that they didn't have a choice. When Sartre's philosophy says we always do have a choice, and you can say that for Sartre, we have a duty to actually explore who we are, our structures of motivation, why we make the decisions that we do, and if we find things in ourselves that are reprehensible or unsavory, to try to correct those if we can. Garcin doesn't do that. Instead, he keeps on, you might say, raising the stakes. He flees rather than going to war, and he says, it's because I'm a pacifist, so I'm really a hero. I'm standing up for my values, my principles. But then it turns out maybe he isn't, and he ends up asking later on. He's showing some qualms, and he's talking with Estelle, and we'll talk more about why he's doing this. He says, here we go. He asks, "Am I a coward?" And she says, "How can I say? Don't be so unreasonable, darling. I can't put myself in your skin. You must decide that for yourself." That's a very typically Sartrean thing. Each of us has to figure out who we are and what kind of person we are. And he says, "I can't decide." Now, to not be able to decide something like that, Sartre would say, is in a certain way it's a choice to not make a choice. It's a choice to pretend like one can't make a choice. And Estelle says, "Well, you must remember, you must have had reasons for acting as you did." And he says, "Yeah, I had reasons." And she says, "Well," and then he asks the key question, "Were they the real reasons?" And she says, don't worry about all that. And he says, "I thought it all out. I wanted to make a stand, but was that my real motive? Was that what I was really doing?" And she says, "Fine, try to be honest with yourself for once." And he says, "Do I really need you to tell me that? Day and night I paced myself from the window to the door, from the door to the window. I pried into my heart, I sleuthed myself like a detective, By the end of it, I felt I'd given my whole life to introspection. There's that reflectiveness to him as well. But always I harked back to the one thing certain, that I had acted as I did. So motives are harder to figure out. We know what we in fact did, and we know what the effects of it were. We know what the choice in that moment was. He said, I'd taken that train to the frontier. But why? Why did I do that? Finally, I thought, my death will settle it. If I face death courageously, I'm no coward. Turned out that he didn't face death courageously, and now he's in hell, still playing the same game of saying, maybe I can, work this out in some way, so actually I'm not a coward, I'm actually a hero. Part of the reason why it's hell for him is because the other people make it impossible for that to be the case, particularly Inez, but also Estelle, each in their own way. For Inez, she's ready to pick at him and say, you actually are a coward, you're just lying to yourself. Estelle, in a certain way, is even more cruel by saying, it doesn't matter to me whether you're a coward or not, just whether you kiss well. So what it is that you're really preoccupied with, what your self-image consists in, I don't care about that. What I care about is what you mean to me, what you provide me. Garcin is the person at the end who will actually say hell is other people, and he is the one who, this is probably a key point that's worth actually putting up here, he is the one who's constantly proposing solutions. So in a certain way, he represents a kind of hopefulness, but a hopefulness that is always going to be disappointed and then collapse in on itself. It doesn't have enough to really see itself through. And he'll propose solution after solution after solution, and we'll look at those. He also comes to realize that they are caught in this, as he puts it, a spider web, where if one of them does something, it affects the others. So that's this character, Joseph Garcin.